UFC President Dana White promised us some UFC 310 news today. Unfortunately, he waited till 1 a.m. Eastern time to drop the news. We have a new main event for UFC 310. We have a new co-main event for UFC 310. And we have a new main event for the fight night the following week on December 14th. So the new main event, UFC 310, is Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura for the flyweight title. I know that's not what people want to hear. That was the original co-main event. Well, the new co-main event is Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry, a 5-round number 1 contender fight in the welterweight division, an absolute heater. Now, if you're wondering, well, Joey, Ian Machado Garry was supposed to take on Joaquin Buckley on December 14th. Well, the new main event for December 14th, which is a UFC fight night in Tampa, is Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. I know. Colby Covington stepping in and fighting a guy who isn't 40 years old on a losing streak? I know. Oh my God, how crazy is that? How crazy is that? Now, we're going to look at something that Ian Machado Garry posted on his Twitter. We're also going to look at a clip from Kevin Ioli's interview with Dana White that I think sheds some light on this situation and what really went on behind the scenes. We'll get to that later in the video. But let's start off with UFC 310. Now, I understand the fan base's reaction. The main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Kai Asakura, isn't a great main event. I got to be honest with you guys. I think Kai Asakura, I think the UFC is really going to get behind him and promote him quite a bit. This is old news. This was a fight that was already on the card as the co-main event, and it was borderline an undeserved title shot. And I think that Pantoja has a massive grappling advantage. I think it's kind of a mismatch. And to be honest, I'm not super hyped for it. I got to be honest, I'm not super hyped for it. And there's not really much to say about that fight. We've already talked about it in the past. Let's talk about the co-main event. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry is a fight that I've been advocating for months. This is a fight that I've wanted to see. Garry, after he beat MVP, said, yeah, I would love to take Shavkat Rakhmonov. So, and I absolutely loved it. And this is why I told you guys, like, when it comes to the welterweight division, I absolutely love Bilal Muhammad and I love Ian Machado Garry because they're both willing to take on anyone, anywhere, anytime. And Garry proved it here. You know, one of my best takes of 2024 was that Colby Covington was ducking Ian Machado Garry like his life depended on it. Like his life depended on it. And this proves it. This further solidifies it. In a clip that I'm going to show you towards the end of this video, I don't even think Colby wanted to fight Joaquin Buckley. I think the UFC had to force him to fight Joaquin Buckley. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But for Ian Machado Garry to decide, just, you know what? I'll move my fight a week up, and instead of fighting Joaquin Buckley, a short, stocky power puncher who has some decent wrestling, to fight the boogeyman of the welterweight division in Shavkat Rakhmonov, that's ballsy as hell. An undefeated fighter putting his O on the line on short notice against Shavkat Rakhmonov. So first off, I don't care if you hate Garry for whatever reason, baseless claims about his wife and all this bullshit. I don't care if you hate him. You have to respect this. There's no way you can't respect this. The fact that he said, you know what? I'll take on Shavkat. Because guess what? This is a number 1 contender fight. If Garry beats Shavkat, which I actually think he can, we're going to get to my prediction in a little bit, there's no denying. Bilal Muhammad versus Ian Machado Garry in 2025. Now, if Shavkat wins, same for him. I mean, to be honest, Shavkat was the most deserving welterweight contender. But like Bilal had said previously, no one had truly earned a welterweight title shot. There was no one out there who kind of got that pivotal win to really stake their claim for number 1 contender. Now, originally at UFC, I believe it was 305, the DDP Adesanya card was tentatively supposed to be Shavkat versus JDM, and the winner of that fight would have been unmistakably number 1 contender. Now, unfortunately, JDM was injured. That didn't happen. And Shavkat was going to get the title shot regardless, and I had no problem with it. Undefeated, nothing but finishes. How could you deny him? And if Bilal wanted to stay active, now Bilal got that bone infection. He had to pull out of the card. So now we get a bona fide welterweight number 1 contender fight. And I'm disappointed, but I'm actually pleasantly surprised with the UFC's decision making. And let me tell you this. A lot of people say, Joey, you're biased for this guy or that guy. I kind of wish this was for an interim welterweight title. I kind of do. Because for me personally, in 2024, seeing Bilal Muhammad get that welterweight title wrapped around his waist after he dumped Leon Edwards on his bald spot. Bald spot dead, back shots dead. And then to see Garry get the welterweight title wrapped around his waist in the same year without having to see Bilal lose, man, it would have been music to my ears. But the reason I'm pleasantly surprised is there was no need for an interim title fight. I'm tired of the UFC throwing out interim titles willy-nilly. So while it would have been fun potentially seeing Garry get an interim welterweight title wrapped around his waist to see the fans melt down, it was the right decision by the UFC not to put an interim title on the line, especially considering Bilal's not going to be out for that long. Bilal said he needs about 6 to 8 weeks before he can jump back into training camp. Bilal can fight in early 2025. Now, the winner of this fight, who knows if they're going to be able to fight in 2025, early at least, depending on how this fight goes. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But with Bilal being out for such a short period of time, there's really no reason to, throw an interim title fight out there. So I'm glad that the UFC didn't do it, even though selfishly, I kind of wish they did. But forget about the titles, forget about the welterweight division, forget about, Tampa, which we're going to talk about in a second. This is a banger, boys. This is a banger. Shavkat Rakhmonov. Actually, let's pull up his resume real quick. We're going to look at this video Ian Machado Garry posted on Twitter a few minutes ago. Usman ducked, Colby ducked. I'm the only welterweight who will take anyone, anytime. Let's go. Facts. But we'll watch that video in a second. Shavkat Rakhmonov. While I understand the names on his resume aren't crazy, beat Wonderboy Thompson, beat Jeff Neal, beat Neil Magny, okay? Decent wins, but not crazy. But the fact that he is 18-0 with nothing but finishes. Undefeated, nothing but finish. He has never been to a decision. He has never lost a fight. And then you have Ian Machado Garry. I understand he's not the finisher that Shavkat is. 15-0. 15-0, 8 finishes. This is a heater, and Garry is kind of in a similar situation as Shavkat. And I understand he didn't have the level of performances that Shavkat had. We can hash those out in a second. But he's got some decent wins. He beat Michael Venom Page, MVP. People kind of shit on that win. MVP's a very, very tricky striker. I talked about it going into the fight. He beat Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal is a very tough matchup. Jeff Neal made it super competitive with Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat took damage in that fight. We'll talk about that in a second. And he also beat Neil Magny, beat the piss out of Neil Magny, just brutalized him. So this fight on paper is just so compelling. And I really do wonder how this fight plays out. I know everyone and their mother is going to say, Shavkat's got this. Easy win for Shavkat. It's not an easy win for Shavkat. It's not. His striking is not super clean. He's dynamic. He has, the kind of flying knees, jumping knees, stepping knees. He has the spinning wheel kicks, which I think he landed on Carlston Harris. We'll come back to this in a second. We don't need this on screen right now. Gary's super clean and has excellent lateral movement. And also, and I talked about this going into the MVP fight, he's an excellent grappler. He grappled primarily before coming into the UFC. So to think maybe Shavkat's going to go out there and just easily out-grapple him, I don't see that happening at all. I don't think, in my mind, if Shavkat wins this fight, it's going to be a war. There's no way Shavkat just does him like Wonderboy. I mean, maybe he could. I find that hard to believe. Shavkat isn't like this super offensive, strong, physical wrestler that Habib Nurmagomedov or a Khamzat Chimaev is. And Garry has a good grappling background. So this is a very, very interesting matchup. And by the way, Shavkat's a badass too. He was supposed to get a title fight. Now he's fighting back in the rankings against an undefeated guy like Garry, who is a very tough matchup. I don't care what anyone says. Very tough matchup. So Shavkat's a badass. Gary's a badass. Both alpha males, unlike that beta Colby Covington, who we'll get to in a second. I love this matchup. I love that it's 5 rounds. I love that it's a number 1 contender fight. I love that both guys were willing to step up to the plate on short notice. I love that the UFC didn't throw an interim welterweight title out willy-nilly. I love that I'm going off at damn near 1 o'clock in the morning or past 1 o'clock in the morning talking about UFC 310. Am I a little bit dissatisfied with the main event? Yes. But at the end of the day, this card is stacked. Let me actually pull up this card real quick. Let me pull up this card. Let me see if I can pull it up. Of course, they got canceled about. Okay, here, I can click on 310. Hold on 1 second. Let me pull this up. 310's looking rather good now. Main event, Pantoja, Asakura. Again, I don't love it. Co-main event is obviously not updated yet. It will be Rakhmonov versus Garry. Featured fight, Cyril Gane, Alexander Volkov. Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling. Vicente Luque, dead body, versus Nick Diaz, dead body. Okay, I don't really care about that much. Former dead body Dominic Reyes versus dead body Anthony Smith. Dead body Clay. Okay, there's some names on the card, but this main card, I mean, for these 4 fights, I like them. I think it's worth the price of admission, which is $80 for the pay-per-view. Movsar Evloev, Aljamain Sterling should be a number 1 contender fight in the featherweight division, at least for Movsar. Cyril Gane Volkov is probably a number 1 contender fight, to be honest. You know, if Jones retires, or we'll have to see what happens, how the heavyweight division plays out. Then we have, obviously, Shavkat versus Garry, number 1 contender fight. And then we have a title fight in Pantoja versus Asakura. So 310 really shaping up. Again, I know it doesn't have that quintessential amazing main event, but it is what it is. It is what it is. I absolutely love this fight. Now, before we get into this video, Ian Machado Garry taking on Shavkat Rakhmonov when nobody else would take it. Nobody else would take it. Before we get into that, I want to give you guys an early prediction. I'm going to be honest, and I may change this pick. I have to think about it. This is my initial reaction. I found out this news maybe 20 I literally put on a shirt. I was going to go to bed tonight. I wasn't going to do anything. I was going to rest up for UFC 309. I'll be streaming it all day tomorrow. Or all night yet tomorrow night. So I don't know why I said it like that. But my gut's telling me Gary's going to get this done. And I know everyone's going to pick Shavkat. I know everyone's going to call me biased. I'm thinking back to that Jeff Neal fight. Man, he took a lot of damage against Jeff Neal. And I know MMA math doesn't really work. And you shouldn't necessarily say, oh, well, Garry, you know, he didn't finish Jeff Neal, but he ended up a lot cleaner. Look, I don't think Shavkat has the level of grappling to scare Garry on the feet. And I think Garry is the more technical striker. And I really think he can go out there and kind of pick at Shavkat at range and fend off the takedowns and land cleaner shots. Now, I do think this will be a super competitive fight. I don't see Shavkat going out there and dominating if he wins. I don't see Garry going out there and absolutely dominating. I'm picking a very competitive decision win for Ian Machado Garry right now. Again, I may change that pick. I've only thought about this for... Basically, this is my live reaction. As soon as the news was announced, I came on here and started recording a video. I'm going to pick Ian Machado Garry to get it done over Shavkat Rakhmonov. Now, let's look what Garry posted on Twitter right after the news was announced. Listen to this.
The UFC called us 15 minutes ago and said, will you fight Shavkat December 7th? I am going to say yes. I believe that it's far more important to talk to you guys and that you guys know first. Can you say, you guys?
Hey guys.
So now, we're in Phuket, Thailand for a chunky southpaw getting ready for Joaquin Buckley. I'm going to change it all. Fight a week earlier on December 7th in Las Vegas, which is where I wanted to fight, when I wanted to fight. The world will only be able to say that I'm a gamer. They will only be able to say that this guy will fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. And the perfect example is give me the boogeyman at the welterweight division and I'll stand in there in 3 weeks' notice and I'll find a way to beat him.
Give that man his fucking respect. Give him his respect. I don't ever want to hear another fucking word. Nobody's ever allowed to call this man a cuck again. Okay? Nobody's ever allowed to defame Ian Machado Garry. It feels good. It feels good, guys. I talked about it. I don't even know if I finished my thought earlier. One of my best takes of 2024 was that Colby was ducking Garry with his life and that Garry was a true alpha male who would take on anyone, anywhere, anytime. I said that months ago. Like we're talking March, April-ish, somewhere around there. That's one of my best takes. I'm taking apologies. Everyone said, Joey, you're just biased. Look who's taking on Shavkat in 3 weeks. You think Colby would dare take that fight on 3 weeks' notice? We're going to get to Colby in a second because I think the UFC forced him to fight Buckley. And we're going to get to some evidence to back that up. Okay, we're going to get some evidence to back that up. But he says Usman ducked. Usman was kind of flirting with the idea at 310 on a broadcast, and then the following week he's on his podcast saying, oh, that's not going to happen. I think he probably priced himself out, if we're being honest. Colby was online saying, he was on Submissive Radio saying, I called out Shavkat and I wanted Shavkat. And then he put out a video, I'm on the golf course, I'm about to call Hunter Campbell. That was all a facade. That was all a tough guy act. He did not want that fight. The only guy who wanted it was Ian Machado Garry. And the reason I know that is because Bilal was out literally the day that Garry versus Buckley got announced. So the UFC had other plans. They thought about Usman. They thought about Colby. Maybe they thought about some other plans. We're going to get to those in a minute. None of those worked out. So they said, you know what? We're going to change the card around, and we're going to put Garry against Shavkat, UFC 310 co-main event. Absolutely love it. Let's talk about the co-main event. Or sorry, not the co-main event. Let's talk about the following week. I actually have it up right here. The following week, we have Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley in Tampa. So first off, this tells me right now, Colby ducked Garry like his life depended on it. They won it. And I told you guys this. And Garry told you guys this. And everyone, there was rumors swirling everywhere. The UFC wanted Ian Machado Garry versus Colby Covington, main event, December 14th in Tampa. Colby's backyard. It was the fight to make. Colby didn't want it. So they went with other plans. Well, since they had to pull Garry to fight Shavkat because Colby was too busy shitting his britches like they were going out of style, they needed someone to step in and fight Buckley. I don't think Colby was the first choice. I don't think Colby wanted to smoke. I mean, Buckley, we're talking about Joaquin Buckley, okay? Joaquin Buckley, 20-6 record, 30 years old. Look at his age right there, okay? And you know what? He's not on a losing streak. He's on a 5-fight winning streak. He knocked out Wonderboy Thompson. He beat Nursultan Ruziboyev and robbed us of a celebration with his coach. He destroyed the dead body of Vicente Luque. He honestly made him a dead body. But I don't think Colby wanted this fight either. I don't think Colby wanted Shavkat. I don't think Colby wanted Garry. I don't think Colby wanted Buckley. Well, Joey, what are you getting at here? Well, I know people probably wonder, Joey, what are you getting at here? I speculated about this on Twitter yesterday, and I think this clip backs up what I thought. I thought what the UFC was going to do is they were going to pull Garry and put him against Shavkat on UFC 310. And I thought what they wanted to do, because Colby wasn't going to take a fight against Buckley, they were going to try to book Carlos Prates against Joaquin Buckley for the December 14th main event. I think this clip backs up my hypothesis. Listen to this.
What was your take on Prates' performance last week?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked me that because there was a lot of talk in the office about him this week, especially on Tuesday. And we were literally looking to do something big with him.
Put him in a big main event in Tampa against Buckley because Colby was too busy shitting his britches on the golf course, sucking off Trump.
Like right now. But he broke his foot. So his foot is, yeah.
In the fight?
No, before the fight, apparently. He said,
let's listen to that one more time, and I want you guys to tell me what you think down in the comments. Listen to the way Dana's phrasing this. They were going to do something big with him right now.
Big with him, like right now. But he broke his foot. So
if that doesn't tell you, I believe they were going to pull Garry, put him against Shavkat on UFC 310. Instead, they're scrambling around. They still need a Tampa main event. They went to Colby. They said, look, Colby. Dana's probably went to Colby. I covered for you so many times. I told the media, no, Colby's not ducking. He's just not fighting. He's out on the presidential campaign. He's out there campaigning. He's not ducking Garry, even though he's very clearly ducking Garry. We've covered for you. We've given you countless undeserved title shots. You shit the bed at UFC 296. Oh, God. Colby, look at Kevin's face here. Colby fighting the last card of the year. Man, I hope he doesn't shit the bed like he did against Leon Edwards. But yeah, I think they called up Colby. They said, look, we need you. We need you. And I think there was about to be a falling out, and Colby wasn't going to be protected and given Dana White privilege anymore if he wasn't willing to take this fight against Joaquin Buckley, who's on a winning streak and not 40 years old. I think that's what happened here. And this just further solidifies the fact that Colby was unwilling to take that Ian Machado Garry fight, that he was unwilling to take a Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. He puts out this facade so he can seem like a badass when in reality he's just a pussy. He's just a beta male. He's a bitch. That's what he is. Okay, he doesn't want these tough fights. He wants to pretend so he can get all the credit while not actually any of the risk. That's what I told you guys earlier this year when he put out all these call outs. He's on a boat saying, oh, Gary's got this wife and I'm going to beat his ass. And but these stipulations, it was an elaborate way to duck Garry, and that's what he did. That's why it didn't happen at 303. That's why it wasn't in the works for Tampa. And now he's being forced to fight Joaquin Buckley. Now, in terms of this fight, love the matchup. Absolutely love the matchup. Would have preferred Garry Colby, but then you're not going to do Buckley Shavkat. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Garry Shavkat was the fight to make if you were going to rearrange this around. I like it. Honestly, let me pull up the rankings real quick. Let me show you guys the rankings real quick. The welterweight rankings are kind of weird right now because Colby's at number 6, Gary's at number 7, Joaquin Buckley's at number 9. Colby has no business being at number 6. No business being at number 6. Garry and Gilbert Burns and Buckley should all be ahead of him. I mean, his last win was against Jorge Masvidal, 2022? Damn near creeping up on 3 years since Colby had a win. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, but now you're seeing number 7, Garry, take on number 3, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Makes a whole lot of sense, especially considering, they're both undefeated and where they're at. They're both kind of on the verge of title shots. Shavkat literally had a title shot. And then Colby needs to fight down in the rankings. He needs to fight an up-and-comer. He hasn't done that ever, basically. His last good wins against RDA, what was that, 2016? So him against Joaquin Buckley is a very good matchup, and it makes sense for UFC Tampa. It's in Colby's backyard. He talks about, I'm the king of Miami. Well, it's in Florida. It's in Tampa. Close enough. And this is Colby's last opportunity. If Colby goes out there and shits the bed against Joaquin Buckley, which I'm suspecting that he will, he's done for. His career's over. He needs to head off into that kind of right-wing grifter kind of area of the internet, because I think Buckley's probably going to embarrass him. Buckley has good grappling. Buckley's not small for welterweight. He used to fight at middleweight. I don't see Colby going out there and putting the pace on him. I think, who was it? There was a fight where, let me actually pull this back up on the screen right now. There was a fight where Buckley was just looking so good in the third. It was against Nasruddin Imavov. He lost the first 2 rounds, won the third round, if I'm not mistaken. He has good cardio. Buckley has very good cardio. So Colby's biggest and only weapon is his cardio and his pace and his wrestling. I know I kind of morphed that all into one thing, but you get my point. I don't think Buckley's going to fade. And if Colby wasn't in training camp, he's been crying, oh, my foot hurts. Oh, my pussy hurts. He's been crying that for a year now. I don't know how it takes a year to heal up from a fake broken foot. But if he wasn't training to fight in Tampa because he was ducking Garry, there's no way he was going to fight Shavkat. And now the UFC's like, we need you. We need you. Get your ass in there, buddy. Man, I think he's going to be in deep trouble against Buckley. Buckley's training for Garry. I know it's still taking on short notice. Shout out to Colby taking the fight regardless. I think he's a bitch, but he took the fight regardless. I think Buckley is a nasty, nasty matchup. I mean, I think Garry would have whooped his ass too, but I think Buckley's probably going to KO him. I think Colby's going to get put out. I think Buckley is like I don't want to say a better version of Usman, because he's not a better version of Usman, but he's a similar style to Usman, who already beat Colby when Colby was in his prime. And Buckley's in his prime right now, and Colby's not. So I see Buckley being able to stuff the takedowns. Buckley looks strong in a lot of his fights as well. I mean, he didn't look like he was getting out-muscled even at middleweight. So I don't see Colby going out there and ragdolling him. I don't see Colby getting him the gas, especially if Colby wasn't training for a 5-round fight or training for a fight at all. I see Buckley winning the fight. I see Buckley probably winning by stoppage. And I know Colby's going to want, give me my flowers. I took this on short notice. I think this is probably Colby's retirement fight. And if he wins, he's going to claim he needs a title shot next, which is just absolutely laughable. But I think this was the best the UFC could make of a broken situation. I really do believe they wanted Prates versus Buckley, which would have been a fucking heater. I would have loved that fight. I think Prates' broken foot took that out of the equation. They called Colby in. Said, Colby, we need you. Forget about the fake broken foot. Step in there against Buckley. It's going to be an interesting matchup. Colby could get it done. He throws a lot of volume, and Buckley isn't particularly polished on the feet, but Colby's hands are garbage. So what I see is Colby probably getting brutally chinned second round and probably making a litany of excuses afterwards and then retiring to go off to right-wing grifting online. I think the UFC did a great job. I got to give the UFC a round of applause. I don't love the UFC 310 main event, but still, man, I think they made the best of kind of a crappy situation right now. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry for the #1 contender spot in the welterweight division. Co-main event, UFC 310, December 7th. Then the new main event, December 14th, Joaquin Buckley versus Colby Covington. The welterweight division, the changing of the guard, boys. You love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Like the video. It is 1:20 right now. I'm going to edit this video quick and drop it for you guys quick. Please like it. Please subscribe. Share the video. I'll see you guys in the next video.